They ripped my dress at my cousin's wedding. My own aunt tore the fabric while everyone laughed and filmed it. They poured wine on me, pushed me into the cake, and threw me out like garbage. They didn't know my husband owned the venue. What happened next destroyed them completely. Before I tell you this insane story, make sure you're subscribed because this revenge is absolutely brutal and so satisfying. Hit that like button if you love karma stories. Trust me, you need to watch until the very end. The revenge will blow your mind. Now let me tell you how my family's cruelty became their worst nightmare. My name is Grace, and I've been married to Daniel Fletcher for 2 years now. If you Google his name, you'll find out he's the CEO of Fletcher Industries, worth about $5 billion, but you'd never know it by looking at us. We live in a nice but modest home, drive regular cars, and dress like normal people. Daniel's the kind of man who wears jeans and t-shirts on weekends and genuinely prefers a home-cooked meal over a 5-star restaurant. That's actually why I fell in love with him. He never needed to prove anything to anyone. My family, the Harpers, had no idea about any of this. They never asked about my life, never cared to know Daniel beyond their first impressions. See, my mother died when I was young, and I was raised by my Aunt Patricia's family. They never let me forget that I was the charity case, the poor relative they had to take in. Growing up, I was always the one wearing hand-me-downs while my cousins got new clothes. I ate after everyone else finished. I was the punchline to their jokes at every family gathering. When I met Daniel at a coffee shop 3 years ago, he was wearing a worn hoodie and reading a paperback novel. He was kind, funny, and treated the barista with respect. We talked for hours. I had no idea who he was, and by the time I found out, I was already in love with the person, not the bank account. We got married in a small ceremony with just a few close friends. I invited my family, but Aunt Patricia said they were too busy to attend a rushed wedding to some nobody. That hurt, but I moved on. Daniel and I built a beautiful life together, quiet and peaceful. But then, 6 weeks ago, I received an invitation to my cousin Sophie's wedding. It was this massive, elaborate affair, society wedding of the year type of thing. Sophie was marrying Christopher, whose family owned a chain of luxury hotels. The invitation was gold embossed and probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The day after the invitation arrived, my phone rang. It was Sophie herself, and her first words were, "You can come, but don't embarrass us, okay?" I asked her what she meant, and she laughed that fake, tinkling laugh of hers. "You know, Grace, just try to look presentable for once. Christopher's family is very important." Then Aunt Patricia got on the phone. "Grace, darling," she said in that condescending tone I knew so well, "maybe you should go shopping before the wedding. We can't have you showing up in your usual, well, you know." My cousin Brandon texted me later that night, "Can your broke husband even afford a gift?" followed by crying, laughing emojis. My other cousin Jessica called offering to lend me a dress because she knew money was tight. I sat there looking at these messages, feeling that old familiar shame creeping in. But then Daniel came home and found me upset. I told him everything, not just about the invitation, but about years of this treatment. The comments, the jokes, the way they always made me feel small. Daniel listened, his jaw getting tighter with every word. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Let's go to this wedding. Let's be ourselves and see how they treat you. But Grace, I'm bringing security, just in case." I decided to do something bold. I wanted to test them, to see if maybe, just maybe, they'd treat me with basic human decency, regardless of how I looked. I went to the mall and bought a simple white dress for $30. It was pretty but plain, nothing fancy. My real designer gown, a stunning piece worth $50,000 that Daniel had surprised me with for our anniversary, stayed in the trunk of our car. We prepared a wedding gift, too, a modest-looking envelope. Inside was a check for $1 million. Daniel also did something I didn't know about at the time. He contacted his security team and his lawyer, telling them to be on standby. The day of the wedding arrived, and my stomach was in knots. We drove to the venue in our regular sedan, not the Bentley or the Rolls-Royce we owned. I wore my simple white dress and minimal makeup. Daniel wore a nice but unremarkable suit. As we pulled up to the massive estate where the wedding was being held, I could see the parking lot full of luxury vehicles. My hands were shaking. The moment we walked in, I knew it was going to be bad. Sophie spotted us immediately, and her face went through about 5 different expressions before settling on horrified shock. "Oh my God," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Is that from Walmart?" Her bridesmaids, all dressed in expensive lavender gowns, immediately circled around me like sharks smelling blood. They were taking photos of me with their phones, barely hiding their laughter. My cousin Jessica reached out and actually touched my dress, pulling at the strap. "This feels like cheap polyester," she announced. Then Aunt Patricia arrived, resplendent in a champagne-colored designer gown, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She took one look at me and her eyes went wide. "Grace, you're making us look bad already," she hissed. "Couldn't you have made an effort?" This is Sophie's special day. I tried to smile and brush it off, but my cousin Amanda, Sophie's younger sister, this tall, blonde, cruel woman, deliberately stepped on the hem of my dress as she walked past. I heard the fabric tear, and she turned around with this fake gasp. "Oops! So sorry, Grace. Guess it was already falling apart anyway." Her friends erupted in giggles, and Uncle Raymond, Aunt Patricia's husband, walked by shaking his head. "Looks like it was falling apart anyway," he muttered. I bent down, trying to fix the tear with a safety pin from my purse, my face burning with humiliation. Daniel put his hand on my shoulder, steadying me, but I could feel the tension in his touch. "Just say the word," he whispered, "and we leave." But I shook my head. I needed to see this through. When it came time to be seated, the wedding coordinator tried to place us with the family section near the front. Aunt Patricia stormed over like a woman on a mission. "Absolutely not," she declared. "These two sit in the very back row. Outside, if possible." Sophie nodded eagerly. "Mom's right. Our important guests need those seats." So Daniel and I were escorted to the worst seats in the venue, metal folding chairs in the back corner near the bathroom entrance, behind a pillar where we could barely see the ceremony set up. Other guests stared as we passed, whispering behind their hands. I held my head high, but inside, I was crumbling. Before the ceremony started, I went to place our gift on the elaborately decorated gift table. The moment I set down our modest envelope, my cousin Brandon swooped in. He picked it up, waving it around like a trophy. "Hey everyone! Grace brought a card. Wonder if there's even $20 in here." He shook it roughly, bent it, then tossed it carelessly onto the table. "Probably just a handwritten note," he laughed. His friends joined in, and someone actually yelled, "Charity case!" Aunt Patricia glided over, looking at the envelope with distaste. "Grace, you shouldn't have bothered." Really? The implication was clear. My gift, like me, was worthless. During the ceremony, things got worse. I could barely see past the pillar, and when I stood up to get a better view, Amanda yanked my arm hard enough to bruise. "Sit down, you're blocking people," she snapped. Uncle Raymond made loud whispers about some people just not belonging, and several relatives turned around to laugh at me. One of Sophie's aunts actually took a photo of me, and I later found out she posted it online with the caption, "When you can't afford to dress up," followed by laughing emojis. The reception was a nightmare from the start. Daniel and I were seated at a table right next to the kitchen doors and the trash area. The table wobbled, the chairs were plastic, and we were clearly separated from the rest of the family. Uncle Raymond walked by with a glass of wine, looked at our table, and said with a smirk, "Perfect spot for you two." Throughout dinner, waiters kept bumping our table while carrying dirty dishes. Meanwhile, I could see my family at the main tables, eating luxury food, drinking expensive champagne, laughing, and having the time of their lives. Our table was served last, and the food was cold. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, hoping to fix the tear in my dress and maybe splash some water on my face. I needed a moment to compose myself, but as I walked down the hallway, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Amanda, along with 2 of Sophie's bridesmaids. They cornered me in the empty hallway, blocking my path back to the reception. "That dress is hideous," Amanda said, circling me like a predator. "Let me help you." Before I could react, she grabbed my dress and ripped it. The sound of tearing fabric echoed in the hallway as a huge tear opened down the side, exposing my slip underneath. I gasped, trying to back away, but the bridesmaids moved in. One of them had a glass of red wine, and she poured it down the front of my dress, the dark liquid staining the white fabric immediately. They were laughing hysterically, filming everything on their phones. Amanda's face was twisted with cruel glee. "Now you really look like trash," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Don't come back inside. You're ruining Sophie's perfect day just by existing." I stood there, frozen, my dress torn and stained with wine, trying desperately not to cry. They walked away, their laughter echoing down the hallway, and I was left alone, humiliated, destroyed. I looked down at myself. I was a mess. Part of me wanted to just run to the car and leave, but I couldn't let Daniel see me like this without knowing what happened. I took a deep breath and walked back toward the reception. The moment I entered, Aunt Patricia spotted me. Her eyes went huge and she screamed, "Grace! What happened to you?" The entire reception, hundreds of guests, turned to stare at me. The music seemed to fade into the background as everyone gaped at my torn, wine-stained dress. Patricia marched over, her face red with fury. "You tore your dress? At my daughter's wedding! How dare you make a scene?" Cousin Brandon chimed in, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Probably couldn't afford quality fabric." "That's what you get for shopping at discount stores," the crowd murmured, some laughing, others looking scandalized. Sophie came storming over in her elaborate wedding gown, her face contorted with rage. "You're ruining my wedding! Everyone's looking! This is supposed to be my day!" I tried to explain that I was attacked, that Amanda and the bridesmaids did this to me, but Amanda burst in with perfect timing. "She's lying!" The dress just fell apart. I saw it happen. She probably snagged it on something. Sophie's face turned even redder. "I want her out. Get her out of here now." As I backed away, trying to find Daniel in the crowd, Brandon stepped forward and accidentally pushed me. I lost my balance and fell backward. Time seemed to slow down as I crashed into the wedding cake table. The elaborate 5-tier cake, covered in delicate sugar flowers and gold leaf, toppled over. The impact sent frosting, cake, and decorations flying everywhere. I hit the ground hard, covered head to toe in cake, my already ruined dress now completely destroyed. The entire room erupted. Some people gasped, others laughed outright. Dozens of phones came out, recording my humiliation from every angle. Aunt Patricia was screaming about the $10,000 cake. Sophie was crying, her perfect wedding moment ruined. Uncle Raymond and Brandon grabbed my arms roughly, hauling me to my feet. "Get her out!" Raymond barked. "This is a disgrace!" They dragged me through the crowd, past all those staring faces, past family members who'd known me my whole life. Jessica called out, "Trashy!" Another cousin yelled, "You never belonged here!" Someone else shouted, "Stay away from this family!" They pulled me to the front entrance and literally threw me out. I stumbled down the steps, falling onto the concrete outside. The heavy doors slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. I sat there on the cold steps, alone, covered in cake and wine, my dress torn to shreds. I was crying now, really crying, all the years of humiliation and pain pouring out of me. These were the people who raised me. This was my family. And they'd just treated me like absolute garbage, destroyed me in front of hundreds of people, and thrown me out like trash. Daniel had been in the restroom during the cake incident and missed the whole thing. When he came out and couldn't find me, he asked someone where I'd gone. That's when his security team, who'd been discreetly positioned throughout the venue, showed him the footage they'd captured. Everything. Amanda ripping my dress, the wine being poured on me, Brandon pushing me into the cake, me being dragged out and thrown down the steps. Daniel's face, normally so warm and gentle, turned to ice. He walked outside and found me sitting there, broken and sobbing. He knelt down beside me, helping me up so gently, like I might shatter. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I should never have left you alone." This ends now. Can we just go home? I whispered. Not yet, he said firmly. Get in the car. Change into your real dress. We're going back inside. I stared at him. What? Daniel, no, I can't. Trust me, Grace. It's time they learned who they've been messing with. He made a phone call, speaking quietly. It's time. Bring everything. In the car, I changed into the designer gown I'd brought as backup. It was a stunning red silk dress that fit perfectly, elegant and expensive. I fixed my hair and makeup using the car's mirror. When I looked at myself, I barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked powerful, rich nothing like the broken girl who'd been thrown out 20 minutes ago. Daniel changed, too, into the custom Italian suit he'd kept in the car. Together, we looked like we'd stepped out of a magazine. His security team flanked us as we walked back to the venue entrance. The doors opened and we stepped inside. The entire reception fell silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Every single person turned to stare at us, and the shock on their faces was almost comical. I looked completely different, transformed from the mess they'd thrown out into someone who clearly belonged in a palace, not at their pathetic little reception. Christopher, the groom, literally choked on his drink. His face went pale as he stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Mr. Fletcher?" he stammered. Christopher's father, a wealthy businessman, nearly dropped his champagne flute. "Daniel Fletcher? The Daniel Fletcher?" The room started buzzing with confused whispers. Sophie grabbed Christopher's arm. "What are you talking about?" "Who's Daniel Fletcher?" Christopher's father's voice carried across the now silent room. "He's only worth $5 billion. He owns Fletcher Industries." I watched as Aunt Patricia's face drained of all color. Uncle Raymond's mouth fell open. Brandon looked like he might be sick. Amanda had gone completely pale, her earlier smugness evaporating in an instant. Daniel walked calmly to the microphone at the front of the room. His presence commanded attention. This was the CEO, the billionaire, the man who ran board meetings and closed billion-dollar deals. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "I'm Daniel Fletcher, CEO of Fletcher Industries." He held up his ID, and it appeared on the large screens positioned around the reception hall. "I believe there's been a terrible misunderstanding about my wife." I walked to stand beside him, my head held high now. The family members who'd tormented me all night looked frozen, like statues of horror and disbelief. "Tonight," Daniel continued, "my wife was assaulted, humiliated, and physically thrown out of this venue. Allow me to show you." He nodded to his tech team, and the large screens flickered to life. Security footage began playing, every single angle of what had happened to me. The crowd watched in growing horror as Amanda ripped my dress, as wine was poured on me, as Brandon pushed me into the cake, as I was dragged through the crowd and thrown down the steps. The footage was crystal clear, undeniable. Gasps echoed through the room. Many guests looked disgusted. Some of Christopher's family members were shaking their heads in disapproval. The Harpers, my family, looked absolutely terrified. "My wife brought you a wedding gift tonight," Daniel said, his voice cutting through the shocked silence. "Let's see how you treated it." He walked to the gift table and picked up our crumpled envelope. With deliberate slowness, he opened it and pulled out the check. He held it up to the camera, and it appeared on all the screens. A check for $1 million. Sophie's scream pierced the air. Aunt Patricia's eyes rolled back, and she actually fainted, collapsing into Uncle Raymond's arms. Brandon rushed forward, his face desperate. "Wait! There's been a huge mistake. We didn't know." "Oh, there's been a mistake," Daniel cut him off. "But not the one you think." He paused, letting the tension build. "One more thing. This venue? I own it." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. "This hotel we're in? Mine. The catering company you hired? Also mine. The car service that brought your guests? That's mine too." Christopher's father turned to his son with a look of absolute horror. Christopher had gone white as a sheet, realizing the implications. "Consider this wedding," Daniel said, his voice deadly calm, "terminated." He snapped his fingers. The lights cut out except for spotlights on Daniel and me. The music stopped abruptly. Like a coordinated dance, the catering staff began clearing food from tables. The bar shut down immediately, bottles being packed away. The venue manager's voice came over the sound system. "This event is concluded. All guests must exit the premises immediately." Sophie started screaming. "You can't do this. You can't just end my wedding." Her voice was shrill, desperate, echoing through the half-dark room. Daniel looked at her with zero sympathy. "I just did." That's when his lawyer stepped forward, a woman in a sharp suit carrying a folder of documents. "We're filing criminal charges," she announced clearly. "Assault, destruction of property, defamation." She walked directly to Amanda, Brandon, Aunt Patricia, and Uncle Raymond, handing each of them papers. "You've been served." Amanda's face crumpled and she started crying. "It was just a joke. We were just having fun." Her voice was desperate, pleading. The lawyer's expression was ice cold. "You filmed evidence of your own crimes. The DA will be very interested in these videos." Two police officers, Daniel had called them during my transformation in the car, entered the venue. They approached Amanda and Brandon. "You'll need to come with us for questioning regarding assault charges," one officer said. Amanda was sobbing now, mascara running down her face. Brandon tried to argue, but the officers were firm. They were escorted out in front of everyone, the ultimate humiliation. Daniel turned to Uncle Raymond, who was desperately trying to hold up the still faint Aunt Patricia. "Your construction company needs city permits to operate, correct?" Daniel asked conversationally. Raymond's voice shook. "Yes." "Why?" "Fletcher Industries owns the majority stake in the city approval board. As of tomorrow, you're blacklisted. Every permit, every approval you need, denied." Raymond's face went from red to gray. "No! Please, I'll lose everything. My business will collapse." The desperation in his voice was palpable. This was a man watching his entire life's work disappear in seconds. Daniel then turned to Christopher's father, who'd been standing frozen in shock. "Our business deal? The $50 million contract your hotels were depending on? It's canceled." Christopher's father looked like he'd been punched. That contract was going to save our company. We're over-leveraged without it." "Should have raised your son to choose better partners," Daniel replied coldly. "You're marrying into a family of criminals and bullies. That's poor judgment." Sophie, her wedding dress now seeming ridiculous in the harsh spotlight, fell to her knees. "Our honeymoon," she wailed suddenly. "What about our honeymoon?" Daniel smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Your honeymoon to the Maldives? I own that resort chain. Your reservation is canceled. You're permanently banned from every property I own. That's about 47 hotels worldwide, by the way." Sophie collapsed completely, sobbing into her hands. Her perfect wedding, her perfect life, demolished in minutes. "The photos and videos of tonight?" Daniel continued. "My team has already released them to social media. You're trending." He showed his phone screen, and I could see #GraceRevenge was indeed trending on multiple platforms. The footage of my humiliation, followed by the revelation and shutdown, was going viral in real time. Aunt Patricia had finally regained consciousness. She looked around at the chaos, the darkened venue, the departing guests, her daughter sobbing on the floor, her son being led away by police, her husband facing financial ruin. "Our reputation," she whispered, "our family, destroyed." "Just like you destroyed my wife," Daniel said simply. I finally stepped forward to the microphone. My voice was steady now, strong. All those years of being made to feel small, and now I was standing tall. "I came here tonight wanting to reconnect with family," I said, looking at each of them. "I would have helped all of you, paid off houses, invested in businesses, funded educations. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I would have shared it, but you showed me exactly who you are." I pointed at Amanda and Brandon being held by the officers. "You two are facing criminal charges. You'll have records. Good luck finding jobs." I turned to Aunt Patricia. "You raised bullies and taught them that cruelty was acceptable. You created this." To Uncle Raymond, "Your business is over. You'll lose everything, just like you tried to make me feel like nothing." To Sophie, "Your wedding day will definitely be remembered, just not how you imagined. You'll be known forever as the bride whose wedding was shut down." I took a deep breath, feeling years of pain and humiliation finally lifting off my shoulders. "I'm done with all of you. Don't call me, don't text me, don't show up at my home. As far as I'm concerned, I have no family here." Daniel took my hand, and together we walked toward the exit. Behind us, chaos erupted. Aunt Patricia was crying, crawling after us on her knees. "Grace, please, I raised you. You can't do this." Her voice was desperate, broken. I stopped and turned to look at her one last time. "No," I said quietly, "you didn't raise me. You tortured me." Then Daniel and I continued walking. Uncle Raymond was shouting about his business, begging for mercy. Sophie was screaming about her ruined wedding. Brandon was calling my name from where the police held him. Their voices faded as we exited into the cool night air. A Rolls-Royce was waiting for us, our actual car, which Daniel had arranged to be brought over. As we drove away, I looked back one last time at the venue, at my family collapsed in the parking lot, destroyed by their own cruelty. I didn't feel happy, exactly, but I felt free. The next week was insane. Uncle Raymond's construction company filed for bankruptcy within 5 days. Without permits and with Daniel's influence, they couldn't operate. He lost everything: his business, his house, his cars. Amanda and Brandon were formally charged with assault. They got criminal records, and Amanda lost her job at a fashion company when the viral videos surfaced. Aunt Patricia was kicked out of her exclusive social club. The other members didn't want to be associated with her after the videos went viral. Sophie's wedding became an internet meme. The image of her crying in her wedding dress as the venue lights went out was everywhere. Christopher's family business lost several major clients who didn't want to be associated with the scandal. My phone had 847 missed calls from various family members, voicemails begging, threatening, pleading, emails promising they'd changed, that they were sorry, that it was all a misunderstanding. I blocked every single number, every email address. The only person I kept in contact with was my youngest cousin, Amy, who hadn't been at the wedding and had always been kind to me. When I called her and explained everything, she cried and apologized for our family. I helped her start her own business, and she's thriving now. Now, a month later, I'm sitting in the sunroom of our actual home, not a mansion, just a comfortable house that Daniel and I love. We donated $5 million to a charity for foster children in my mother's name. We still live modestly. Daniel still wears jeans on weekends. I still prefer cooking at home to fancy restaurants. The money didn't change us, but it revealed everyone else. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. Then I remember sitting on those steps, covered in cake and wine, my dress torn, crying and alone. I remember years of being made to feel worthless. I remember Amanda's face as she ripped my dress, the glee in her eyes. And I know I did exactly what I needed to do. I didn't want revenge. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted respect. I wanted basic human dignity. They couldn't even give me that, so they lost everything instead. And that's how one night of cruelty cost my family absolutely everything. They tore my dress. They destroyed me in public. They threw me out like trash. But they forgot one thing: never underestimate the quiet ones. My husband and I still live modestly, but we have the power to protect ourselves now, and we used it. If you loved this revenge story, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment, Team Grace or Team Family. Do you think I went too far, or did they deserve everything they got? Check out the next video for another wild story of karma. Remember, treat people with kindness. You never know who you're messing with. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.